Hey everyone, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another episode of the Win Educational Webinar Series. We've got a really good one for you today, sponsored by Vintrace, and it's titled How to Effectively Collaborate with Your Distributor to Future-Proof Your Winery. Obviously, as the title indicates, the session is really going to be taking a look at different ways that you can partner with your distributor, different programs that you can put in place to help you navigate your way through these challenging times. Obviously, working with your distributor, partnering with your distributor, having that mentality is always important, even during the best of times. But certainly when times are challenging like they are right now in 2024, it's more important than ever. We've got a great panel. Today's session is going to be moderated by Garth Beyer. Garth is the marketing manager for vintrace. Garth is going to be joined by Marty Peterson, who's the COO of Foley Family Wines, along with Nathan Mansperger. Nathan's the VP of Digital Supplier Growth for Southern Glazers, along with Julie Milroy, who's the Vice President of Supplier Development and Marketing, also with Southern Glazers. So really good panel. You're going to get the perspective, obviously, from the distributor side. They're going to be able to share some great advice from what they've seen working with so many different brands across so many different price points and appellations. And of course, we've got the winery perspective there with Marty. And, you know, Foley Family Wines represents a number of different wineries, also different appellations, different price points. So Marty brings a really terrific perspective to the conversation as well. Now, as is always the case, we pre-record these sessions a couple of days in advance. We do it for quality purposes, but we also do it to encourage as much interaction as possible. So all of our panelists are going to be watching the broadcast right along with you, monitoring the chat room. So as you have questions, you don't need to wait till the end of the presentation to ask those questions. Go ahead and submit them in the chat feature as they come to you, and our speakers will pick them off as they come in. All right, I think that about covers it. Once again, I want to thank Vintrace for their support and sponsorship. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us, and of course, our panel today. All right, Garth, take it away.
Thank you so much for joining this webinar on how to effectively collaborate with your distributor to future-proof your winery. This webinar is perfect for both wineries and distributors who are looking to scale and optimize their sales. I'm Garth with Encompass Technologies, leading organization of Vintrace Wine Cloud and your MC for the webinar today. To cover our future-proof topics, we have three incredible panelists joining us. We've got Julie Milroy, VP of Supplier Development and Marketing for Southern Glazers, Nathan Mansperger, VP of Digital Suppliers Growth at Southern Glazers, and on the wine side, we have the one and only Marty Peterson, COO of Foley Family Wines. I had the pleasure of spending some time with Foley and Southern Glazers last year at our Maker to Market conference, and could say to all listeners and watchers of this that you're about to gain access to some incredible leaders in the wine industry. And given our clout, you probably don't even need me to say that, but here we are. For this webinar, we've got four main objectives. One, we're here to help wineries and distributors understand the basics of aligning with a new partner. It could be what the courting process looks like, watch out for's, experience of these two partners together. Two, we're going to hear some best practices, maybe some story examples of when there's been clear and proactive communication, and obviously not with each other, but maybe they'll share examples of experiences they've had when things have not worked out. Third, we want to make sure you leave with some strategies for success with data-driven decisions. So what data these companies are zeroing in on, how they're making decisions based from them. And fourth, you can't talk about wine distribution without sharing ways to optimize logistics through the supply chain with the winery. So those four goals, we're gonna cover questions around each of those and dive a little bit more deeply. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and get things kicked off with this first question. What qualities do you look for in a quality partner? And Julie, I'll throw it over to Southern Glazers to kind of kick this one off, and then I'll bring it over to you, Marty.
Thanks for having me. So I think it's a broad question. What qualities do we look for? I think as a company, it's really important for us to work with supplier partners that are really willing to come in as a partner with us, regardless of where they are on their journey. Obviously, we are a national company across all regions and most markets, and we have a unique business model where we can really leverage our presence across all markets to really scale for brands that are leveraging national accounts and having one point of contact for retail and on-premise. However, we also work with smaller wine and spirit suppliers as well. And I think that ultimately the qualities in both, whether they're ready to scale or start small, is really looking for a long-term partnership on investing and growing the brands long-term.
And Marty, how about from your point of view?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me. Happy to join here, Garth and team. From my point of view, it comes down to the word partner, and you really need somebody who understands what that means. We're in this together, right? And when I look for a good partner, I'm looking for someone who's going to tell us what they're going to do and then do what they told us they were going to do, right? Set those expectations early on, come up with a plan, and then we go forth and execute. Now, we all know that best laid plans change along the way. So the other part of the partnership is, hey, things change. So be ready for change and be ready to pivot and work together to problem solve. All too often, people enter partnerships and come to the table with a set of plans, and then when things change, it's someone else's fault or problem, and it's not. At a partnership, it's all of our problem, it's all of our solution, it's all of our win when that happens. And the folks like the Southern Glazer folks see that every single day. We live in an evolving market. Our consumer, more than ever today, changes their mind very quickly. We're in an industry that has a long lead time and long tail on it, and we need to work together as the consumer evolves quickly, and more quickly today more than ever, to stay ahead of it. And those are the type of tools and those are the type of forward-thinking models that we run here at Foley Family Wines.
That's awesome. So attitude, obviously a big component of it. Julie, are there any, metrics that you kind of keep an eye out for that become a little bit more priority when you're evaluating the partners? So if they do come to you with a plan, hey, here are my products, here's my goal, here's my plan that I'd love to partner with you on. Could you maybe share a few tidbits of kind of things that you look out for outside of the attitude and obviously having a plan together for you guys?
Yeah, and our process of bringing in new suppliers and new brands it is quite thorough. I guess it would be a good word to describe it. We are really looking for brands and suppliers that have a long-term and a short-term path. So that requires really understanding, what is our path to where we want to be. And that's short-term, as Marty said, market conditions change day by day. I think we're always solving every single day. There's new challenges, but it's really about what are you looking for within your brand near term and long term, and what are the different resources and tools that you've already invested in that. And that's really going to determine if they're a fit for Southern Glazers or not. I think everybody would have great intentions to come in as a partner, but with the way that our company is set up, it's really important to understand what are those strategies that you have identified for your brands. What are those investments that you have made and are looking to continually make? And what is that work that's already been done to activate and get out into the market? We have our brand new site on our website that anybody can get on to understand all those different parameters that we're looking for if you want to become a partner with us.
Awesome. So that kind of gives us a good lay of the land of how to get things started. Now, you guys, you're not just starting out. You've been at this together for quite some time now. So how does a partnership look like that's a little bit more, tenured? It's beyond the infancy stages and more into the mature stages. Can you maybe share some highlights of things that you guys do to just have that effective collaboration in the present time?
Is that for me?
That one's an open mic. Whoever grabs the mic on this one.
I'll pass it to Marty.
Okay. Yeah, I want to go back to the partnership just for a second, and Julie hit on it too. It comes down to trust, and you really boils down to trusting one another. in the business. Our goal is to deliver to our consumer a fantastic product at the right price and blow their expectations out of the water, right? And we know alignment with Southern is perfect for us. And we know that we trust them having that same common goal, and we're able to drive from there. So we have all of it is rooted in trust, even to the data level, right? So we work very closely with Southern to understand what our depletions look like, what our shipments look like, and how our data is going to connect. And we have to trust our data, right? There's different processes and different softwares that Southern uses and that Foley uses that collates a lot of data. We said it 100 times in this industry of software, garbage in, garbage out, right? So we work really closely to make sure that Southern has the best data of the products that Foley is presenting so that their systems could be most up to date so they can react and evaluate that data to forecast on the go forward. Vice versa, equally as important. Anything that Southern's sharing with us, Foley side, needs to be trusted. That data needs to be clean. We need to understand it with some level of accuracy and know that if we're making decisions that can go forward from a trusted foundation of data as we move forward. To execute this, there's a lot of moving parts, to be honest. There's regular scheduled meetings, there's internal controls, there's APIs that move data in and out of our systems collectively, all the way from our boots on the ground sales team in the market that are looking at retail level data to filter all the way back into vintrace in our bulk wine system that's going to inform our winemaking team on which products we need to build and schedule for bottlings, all the way back to our grower relations and viticultural team to understand how to crop and what vineyards we may or may not need in the go forward. So it's a very linear goal that we have, but we have to trust the data and we have to stay in regular cadence to make sure that we're aligned to support that level of complexity.
Anything to add there, Julie or Nathan?
I think Marty hit it on the spot. I think once you do solidify that partnership, trust and transparency is really what's going to take us to the next level. And I think with Foley family as a partner, we've been able to show that works. And it comes down to every leader working together from both companies, from across multiple departments. And that same level of trust and transparency is important from the top all the way down to the local sales teams that execute. So I agree with him 100%.
Awesome. That's a fantastic segue into the next topic here, which is around diving, let's peel that onion back another layer around proactive communication. Marty, you touched on a lot about information and data to make good decisions, but could you talk a little bit about like the product data specifically and how that is fed from the supplier side, and then maybe hand it over to you, Julie and Nathan, to the distributor side, and ultimately to the retailer and consumer. So how are you guys ensuring that information about the products, the vintage, maybe tasting notes, etc., make it all the way? Because that's a handful of touch points, right, for a good chunk of information that is ultimately going to be the thing that one of the variables that influences a purchase behavior. So Marty, could you maybe speak a little bit on the product information side and how you compile and hand that off?
Yeah, no, great question. It's a very broad question. There's a very long pipeline that we manage of information to get that right. And there's definitely, it can be a bumpy road, and it does take interaction and data management and cleanup along the way. So we actually start our process with a project planning module that is outside of any of our ERP. So this allows us to be creative. It allows us to develop. It allows for stakeholders on the sales team, marketing team, winemaking team to have input that doesn't affect our data on the go forward. So we're able to have a creative sandbox in a new product development platform that hosts and allows a visibility and transparency to our entire organization as we develop product. Once we've landed on something, we can take from that software and enter it into our ERP system in a very clean way. So we want an item number that is very clean. We want things like appellation codes and vintage codes. All of those need to line up and be formatted correctly, or we run into a tremendous amount of issues. Those then collate into all of our different software systems. So our ERP system sits at the middle, and then we API out of that into things like vintrace and other marketing research, as well as working through the pipeline. When we ship an invoice to Southern, we've already gone ahead and entered into their systems and given them all of the information we have down to the item number, vintage, varietal, appellation, so on and so forth, into their system. So before they write a purchase order, they already have all the clean data. And once we're entered into the system in a clean way, we can then progress all the way through the pipeline to scan data, ultimately, that can reflect back on the consumer pool. If those things all line up and collate, we win. When they don't, it becomes very difficult, and there's a lot of bumps in the road, and it undermines the trust that we have in the data and the pipeline. And that's when we have to sort of put on our thinking caps and figure it out another way. But the idea is clean data in, clean data out. It's very fundamental to really any software system.
For sure. And one of the things from when we look at opportunities where Southern Glazers can support our supplier partners, we've seen that content, for instance, right, being able to take the product name, description, images, all the, if we want to talk about tasting notes and ingredients and all those other pieces, and be the facilitator of getting that information to retailers, right? Not only to our own internal B2B platform, SG Proof, so that retailers can see that information when they're ordering from us, but also ensuring that that information is clean and accurate and syndicated out to national accounts, regional accounts, to make sure that as consumers are interacting with those products, whether that be online or on that app or doing research on a retailer's platforms, that information is also accurate, correct, looks great, and is showing up in the right places. And that's one of many opportunities we've seen to be able to let suppliers lean into that as a service, than rather trying to build their own connections with these retailers. And when things break, right, they break for everybody, and everybody's scrambling around and sending emails. But looking at ways to have one standard kind of highway of content that is placed out into retail. That way, when something breaks, we can fix it, open up the pipe, and everything is flowing accurately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've come a long way in the last decade. Thank goodness to technology on how we get this information from the winery to the consumer. Yeah,
it's very critical to make sure that those handoffs are that we're very focused to ensure a solid handoff. We think of it as market ready, right? As the information comes into the system, is it priced correctly? Is it forecasted? Is it on hand? Is it ready to be sold to retailers? And even taking it a step further, obviously making sure as we partner with retailers to ensure that those products can be ordered, can be that they will scan through when they're delivered. So there's many handoffs and coordination that needs to occur, and that's again one of the places that we are really focused on providing really great service in that space.
All right. So when we think about producers that are either looking to expand their winery or build one, they've got to be thinking through how to get that communication through the full supply chain. Because ultimately, yes, Marty, it is good data in, good data out. But if it is good data in, there's a correlation between positive sales as well in relation to those who are not putting good data in and to those who are not putting any data in, let alone bad data. So when you don't have that product information seeping through the full supply chain to the consumer, your retailers, they may be choosing to order something that they have the historical data on or tasting notes on versus something that doesn't. Is that fair to say, Julie and Nathan, that you're seeing that through your platform when folks are purchasing it?
Absolutely. Now that we've, and Nathan can speak to this more, we've put in very specific processes over the last few years to ensure that we get that accurate data from the winery, from the supplier in regards to vintage, appellation, details, names. I can tell you when I started, 14 years ago, none of it was accurate. So to answer your other question, were retailers ordering the right item or were we making assumptions on which item they wanted? I feel like it's very cleaned up now because of the very specific processes we've put in place. But then again, when you take it to that next level and get all of your content, as Nathan mentioned, through our B2B platform Proof, we do see an uptick in point of distribution and people shopping around when they see all the images and they have all that information and all those details. We absolutely do see an uptick in these brands.
Yeah, we see the same from a B2C perspective. We're living in an omni-channel world. Consumers are looking at information in various points along their journey to purchase, whether that's, again, walking through the store. They may pull up the app to have more information, but are still checking out in store. They may be ordering online. And so that content and all the different layers of it are being leveraged in multiple different places, depending on where the consumer is. And suppliers are frankly in very different places about being able to produce all of that content and imagery and all the things that you need. But in the studies that we've done with a lot of the leading national accounts, content completeness absolutely is having an impact on sales. Related to, whether that's leveraging best practices, whether that's making sure that the content's correct, but also the breadth of content absolutely makes an impact, and more retailers are leveraging that information to build landing pages, to build other points of interaction around the supplier brands and products. So it's very important to collaborate together to understand where the gaps are, to understand where there's opportunities, so that we can work together to close that, because in the end, it ends up being a better consumer experience. And that's what's really going to drive those incremental sales.
Yeah, I'll build on that as well. There's two really important parts if you're starting up. The first thing is you must realize as a supplier, it's your responsibility to build the content. Okay. The distribution team, the retail teams, to get that to the consumer is really it's on the supplier. That messaging, how you're going to position it, all the collateral that may go with it one way or another is on the supplier. So come prepared with all of those things and make sure it's clean. The second thing that's really important is as little of friction as possible, right? My job is to make sure that our partners at Southern Glazers, our partners in the market at the retail level, and the consumer can receive that information with almost no effort. Because if they have to go out and search for it, it's kind of a deal breaker. They're not going to try so hard. They're going to say, I'm going to go with the path of least resistance here. There's plenty of wines in the wide world of sports. Let's go find one that I can get information from right here, right now, and make a really nice presentation. That all starts at the producer level. It needs to be clean, reliable, and trusted that it's accurate, and then zero friction right through the pipeline.
And going back to Nathan and Julie, we talked about product information all the way through. Now let's pivot a little bit. Could you share maybe a few of the, not looking for the full playbook, but a few building blocks of, okay, you have the sales data. How does that communication collaboration with Foley unfold in terms of helping to influence production or bottling schedules, et cetera, on their end based on the sales data? Can you maybe share a couple building blocks? Is it a meeting? Is it an API connection that's filtering info that's real time? What does that kind of look like if you're willing to share?
Yeah, I think I'll take this on a high level. We are, what I like to say is we're actively closing the gap to goal, and this is an ongoing process that happens from January 1st or whenever the fiscal starts to the end of the year. And there's a lot of moving parts there. So, at a high level, I think number one is leveraging technology and really state-of-the-art tools, which we have on forecast, right? And understanding, if not, and this is how I explain it to my supplier partners, if nothing else was done today to activate the brands based on trend, market conditions, this is what the system is saying we will sell. And from there, you then have the communication. As we are a national company across all three regions, we have teams from a regional perspective for open markets and then a contact for control markets. Then the work happens. We work through our regional leadership from both companies, and we then start figuring out whether there's upside or downside based on that local commercial intel, which is really important because we know that market conditions change by the day. So once you take that plus all of the information that we get from the supplier, in this case, Foley family, what are additional insights that their team have? Are there new chain commitments for some of the big retail chains, on-premise chains? Is there new innovation and new items that are coming into the market that will be in addition to what we have? Are there new campaigns and brand investments that weren't there the prior year that the system, as sophisticated as it is, it can't tell what's in the future? So it takes all of that information, and it's constant communication. I mean, I think we've changed from the old school days of just meeting every quarter and talking about what happened to meeting regularly on what's going to happen and what we need to do to make things happen. So it is constant communication, and it's understanding what the system is telling us and the technology and what the commercial intel is telling us so that we can anticipate what depletions are going to be and what supply needs to be.
Yeah, I think perfectly aligned with Julie, and that's why we work so hand in glove together, same team 100% of the time. What Julie's describing was never better on display than first COVID, when the consumer went bonkers and we didn't know on-premise opening, closing, take it home and drink it versus this or that price point. Everything changed basically overnight, and the constant communication back and forth to try to predict a shipping schedule, more or less a depletion schedule, was an incredible amount of work. And it took a lot of alignment through the data, but also through the communication, because the tool at that point had never seen a global pandemic, right? So it didn't know what to do. And there had to be a lot of human element that the data wouldn't inform the intuitive. We have a lot of strong people, knowledgeable, with a lot of experience that came to the table to help us through that. Now, what got really interesting is we had this global pandemic thing that was challenging. And then we coupled right on top of that the fires across the entire Western seaboard, Washington, Oregon, and California. And the supply chain then put a massive wrinkle in what we do. And so doubling up with two existential threats, supply on one side, demand on the other, and trying to make sense of it took a lot of team collaboration, communication on a very regular basis. And it was a good thing we were out ahead of the data so that we could make all of those considerations all the way back to bottlings, and not only for just bottling wine, but keeping in mind that things like glass bottles and cardboard, the cardboard industry changed overnight with Amazon soaking up like 80% of all the production in the United States, something to that effect. It was a heck of a challenge, but we learned a lot from it. And now we go forward with partners that we can trust and that we've been through that battle with, which is reassuring as far as I'm concerned from the supply chain perspective.
Marty, for once you've got some of that data and you need to make some production decisions, could you share maybe a few tips and tricks to how to best communicate that out with the production facilities or winemakers that are impacted by those decisions? Is there some level of both direction and assignment, but also inspiration? How do you get the winemaking team kind of involved in these decisions based on the data?
Yeah, well, number one, paramount. They're intimately involved in all of the decision making, down to, of course, the bottling and the bottling volumes. The demand signal coming from the market is an indicator or an informant of what we're actually going to do, right? So the way we look at it here at Foley Family Wines, if you can imagine a Venn diagram with 3 circles that overlap in the middle, we have style. So the style of the wine, which the winemakers are very, very responsible for. So think of style as the way it's going to look, feel, smell, taste, okay? Then we overlap that with quality. Quality is the ingredients that we're giving the stylists, the winemakers, to shape and design whatever it might be, right? And then the third leg of that is cost. So how do we figure out how we make the wine correctly in time to meet that data signal and balance cost, quality, and style to deliver profitability throughout the supply chain and reliability to the consumer? Last thing we want to do is force upon one of those 3 pillars, cost, quality, or style, something that doesn't fit and make a poor business decision. If we make a wine out of the style that our consumers consistently relying upon, we're going to disappoint everybody. If we don't deliver a quality product, if it's leaking, if the label's on sideways, if it's not compliant, we're going to disappoint everyone. If we make a product that's so cost conservative that we didn't allow style and quality to play through, we're going to disappoint people. If we make a product that's way over cost, we're going to lose our margins and we're not running a sound business. So our goal is to balance those 3 pillars of style, quality, and cost all the way through the supply chain.
Awesome. Inspiring. Moving to third topic here, let's dive a little bit further into specific data. So Julie, Nathan, from your end, how do you align with partners regarding market trends and those consumer insights? Like, we have some forecasting data, and Marty touched on, the I guess the expected unexpecteds of the world. We know something will happen. We don't know if it's a pandemic or another fire, but we know something will happen. But kind of those 2 things aside, how do you align with Foley on those market trends? Are you providing insights from the larger data set that you have to help him influence those decisions on what to make within that diagram? Is there another path forward? How do you kind of keep them aligned with any market trends that you're seeing?
Well, I'll start us off. I think we have a lot of proprietary data within the company and proprietary tools that will help us understand by category, by varietal, by type, by market, by premise, anything you wanted to dive into. We have proprietary tools at Southern Glazers that we can dive into that data, and we do regularly. how are the Foley family wines comparing to a similar price point category to the rest of what we call the house within Southern Glazer. So we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to understand total ACV, cumulative volume by account, revenue, dollars, or by specific subregions. I think I would say that our internal data really helps us understand if and how we can maximize our partnership and our market share within, specifically by a supplier. And then additionally, we've got syndicated data that we all have various memberships to between Nielsen's and IRI, and it's really all about sharing that information back and forth. But I would say that ultimately, some of our internal data tools on specific depletions that we manage from, that come in from the supplier to us as a distributor out to the accounts. We have, very good data that we can use in that regard. And then we really work with the supplier and syndicated data to understand how is that being consumed, or, how is the consumer impacting that, and how is that getting out from the businesses and the retailers to the consumer. And I know, Nathan, within our digital platform, we have a lot of different ways on understanding marketing trends and consumer insights that you might want to add.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's exactly right. There's two ways to approach this, right? There's, from one perspective, it's leveraging new technology within the space to understanding what's happening at store level in a way that we've never been able to have before, like moving more and more towards real-time insights into what's happening in the store. Product availability is one of the things that we've really been focused on recently, ensuring beyond invoice data of has it been sold, but also understanding, is it still on the shelf? How many bottles, is the product still available? Is it going in and out of stock all the time because we have a space to sales issue? Our sales reps aren't just camped out at these stores all day long, and so being able to leverage new insights and keep up with trends from a technology perspective has really allowed us to be and strengthen our ability from a logistics perspective, from an understanding what's going on in the market, keeping the products available in stock. Then there's the second piece of it as, what are the new ways to influence consumers, and what are these? What are the consumers searching for? What are the trends in that space? How do you reach and speak to those consumers? And so we actually ended up building an in-house digital agency to be able to make sure that as these new platforms, as the fourth tier has emerged, as alcohol delivery, shopping for alcohol online has become easier and easier and more widespread for consumers to interact with, how can we help our supplier partners understand the space, understand how they can operate in the space, what are some of the best practices there, and making sure as they are placing bets from a marketing perspective that we're focusing on what's going to have the best ROI, or what's going to deliver on the goals around what that brand is specifically trying to achieve, and which consumers they're specifically trying to talk to.
Awesome. And Marty, if there was let's just imagine a computer screen that's got a dashboard on it and it's got some main KPIs at the top, right? It's the thing that you're looking at each day in relation to your distribution partners. What are those KPIs? What are those first few that you're like, I've got to gut check how this partnership is going and where I need to lean in more to help out? What are those KPIs on that dashboard, if you can entertain us with an imaginary scenario here?
Yeah, well, good question. There's quite a few of them. As we work through it, one of the things is boiling it down so we can actually, make sense of some things, because it's incredibly powerful, the data that's being collected in today's world, and that's very important. So on along the lines of your question, we actually monthly meet with the Southern team, and they have KPIs of their own and of ours that they hold us all accountable to and ask us to validate, which I think is really important in the partnership side of it. It's like, hey, here's the data we're seeing. Can you take a look at it, make sure it looks right, wrong, maybe whatever. Let's go correct it and make sure it's there. But things like days on hand is a big deal in today's world. Carrying inventory longer than any one part of the pipeline needs to is problematic for many reasons, but mainly the carrying cost of things, right? So days on hand is a big deal. Days in transit, how efficient are we actually moving it through logistically? Order accuracy, forecast accuracy are also big ones. Order accuracy, because we don't want to touch it more than once, right? We want to get it right first time and move it through the pipeline. Forecast accuracy, because we want to know how we're performing so that when we look into the future to plant vineyards or buy grapes or otherwise, we have a level of confidence that we're headed in the right direction some 3 and 4 years out sometimes. So those are just a few that I pay very close attention to. We look at release dates and timings of things all the time as well. But if you think through days on hand, order accuracy, and forecast accuracy, you're hitting the high points that help run a successful business and a healthy supply chain.
So you mentioned logistics a few times, which is great segue into last topic here around finding cost savings with logistics. So Julie and Nathan, I'll throw this one over to you. What are some ways that you're finding cost savings with logistics? Is there any low-hanging fruit for folks out there, or something that maybe in cahoots with Foley here that you've really zeroed in on optimizing? Any storied examples you can share?
Well, I think we found a few, right, Marty?
Yeah.
One of the special things with a partner like Foley Family and aligning with us pretty much across every market, I think minus a couple franchise markets, we set up a synergy work stream where we, as Marty referred to, we meet once a month, and then within our mutual teams, they're actively working through the month. And it really is about finding and creating these synergy, smaller work streams for cost savings. I think one of the ones that we're attempting right now, and maybe Marty can give some examples of some that we've already done. One of the big things is with our new logistics, ANCA, a new logistics third-party company that we've launched. We're able to do a lot of different things to help with cost savings and to scale and do a lot of things. So one of the things that we're working on right now is a consolidated direct import from New Zealand. And that is something that's really game changing in this industry. In the past, we're working with wine. Bill Foley has a New Zealand portfolio that we're planning to double down on this year. And some markets, if they have the volume to do it, they're able to order direct import, which is a cost savings. But of course, you have to have the volume to be able to do that. And on top of it, you have to, most of the time, even if you do have the volume, you're having to purchase more than you might need on hand, right? So then it'll kind of throws off our days on hand. And there were only a few markets participating in that. And it's usually the big 4 markets that are able to do a direct import. With ANCA and this new logistics company that we've recently launched, we are looking to do a consolidated direct import where Southern Glazers would purchase all the product as direct import, bring it to our consolidation warehouse, and then send it out to all the markets so that you get the smaller markets like Indiana and Kentucky and South Dakota that can also benefit from the direct import cost. So that would be not only a cost savings for Foley family, but for our teams to really get after ambitions on getting a brand out to market. So I think that's an example that I have. And Marty, I know you've got a few that are close to you.
Yeah, that's a great example. And the Southern team brought that concept to Foley, and we said, this is awesome. What a better way of thinking of it. You know, logistics and cost savings is all about how many times you touch it, right? And the fewer times you can touch it, the better you're doing. So when the Southern team came to us and said, hey, we're opening up a new company, we have some distribution centers, we opened our eyes pretty wide, and we said, great, we have some volumes, we have some new formats that we could plug into that as a partner and go win. So I think the New Zealand example is probably the best. I'll give you a small local one as well, just for fun. Foley runs about 5 different trucks. So we have our own little small trucks that go from our bottling line down to our warehouse, and then Southern takes from our warehouse into their supply chain system. Well, part of the Southern Glazer's supply chain system is to use regional hubs. Those regional hubs are essentially consolidation centers, and those consolidation centers then distribute out to specific markets. So from a transport perspective, we were shipping trucks down from our bottling line, delivering finished goods, and then full trucks, and then empty trucks back up to the bottling line, right? So we had a deadhead haul line that was essentially just costing us money in labor and fuel that had no value to it. So with a little extra creativity and thought process, we developed a supply model or logistics model that brings supply chain or finished goods down to our warehouse. Then we're able to be a supplier again to Southern and take it from our Napa warehouse into their supply chain hub, which is in Fairfield, which is a consolidation center. Coincidentally, across the street from that warehouse is our glass supplier. So we're able to then have full loads of glass and run that glass back up to the bottling site. So now we have a triangle of logistics, and essentially not 100%, it's probably 60 or 70% of the time, we have a full truckload going back up to our bottling site, which is everybody wins, right? And whether it's a environmental initiative, a cost savings initiative, we know we didn't affect the style of the wine. We helped with the cost, and we may have actually improved some of the quality parameters because we're able to shorten the supply chain at that point, and schedule our own timing of things too from our warehouse footprint. So there's a lot of little wins that add up to big things. And that's, you got the global example of New Zealand, which Julie hit on. And then I've got the local example of just working hand in hand with these concepts that you're on the same team. And a Southern win, even if Foley doesn't benefit from it straight away, is a Foley win.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So what I'm consistently heard throughout this is there's playbooks, there's optimizations already in place, there's foundational ground laid, but what is a really key element that I'm seeing from you guys in particular is there's room to exercise a creative brain and to suggest things that might not work at face value and collaborate around that. So collaboration isn't just holding each other accountable, right? Of, you said you were going to do this. Yep, you did this. I said I was going to do this. I did this. It sounds like every step of the way, you're also talking to each other around, well, what if this happened? Or what if we did this? How might that make an impact for both parties? So it's a win-win-win situation for us. That is awesome. Leading up to our last question here is just, we can go ding, ding, ding across the line here. Any final advice for wineries to effectively collaborate with the distributor? So Julie, Nathan, Marty, why don't you take us home with a top takeaway here for our listeners and watchers?
Sure. I like this question. I think the final advice is over the years with technology, with talent, I think the relationship between supplier and distributor have changed significantly for the better. I think the advice that I would have for wineries is to be open, be willing to look at new ways to running and managing your business and getting your brands out there. Leverage the technology that we have, specifically the capabilities that we have as a distributor that might not have always been there in the past. We talked about logistics quite a bit. We've talked about our internal tools. But when it comes to marketing, I feel like in the past, it was always the supplier was responsible for marketing and the distributor was responsible for pushing out depletions. And the biggest success we've seen is really partnering not only from the sales perspective, but logistics, supply chain, and marketing and digital, and doing a full circle. We've got those capabilities, and maximizing them are really going to get these brands to that next level. But I would say that specifically taking advantage of some of our digital capabilities in today's world is something that nobody should waste any time with.
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement. I think big opportunities to lean in. I think historically, distributors were thought of having a very specific role within the route to market, and more, we are a partner in brand building, and being able to lean into that and leverage those tools instead of maybe using a third party that isn't really focused on the industry, doesn't know the ins and outs, isn't sitting on all this, all the capabilities and all the data that we have as an organization. And so not being afraid to leverage that, to lean in there, trying to do it all yourself from a supplier perspective instead of collaborating, problem solving, focusing on data to make decisions and deliver on results, because the industry is continuing to change. There are continuing to be opportunities where leveraging our capabilities, there's other stuff that the suppliers can focus on internally where their dollars are going to go further, and they're going to have a bigger impact on how they're trying to grow the business when it comes to some of the things that we've streamlined and create processes around. I always use content as an example. If everyone's trying to do everything individually, it's going to be really expensive. But if our role is to, we want to make doing business with Southern Glazers easier, and we want to make sure that we're making those connections so that when suppliers come to us with issues, problems, we've seen it before. We can work together to solve it, get to where they're going. But you gotta leverage the tools, right? We've built these tools and frameworks in a way that allows us to manage the complexity of the business. And if you're not using the tools, it's really tough from a planning perspective, from an execution perspective, for that stuff to be effective. So my advice is to understand the processes and tools that we've put into place. Always iterate with us as a partner on how we can do it better. But if it's you're just expecting us to drop the case off and go it on your own, that's not an effective partnership, and you're not going to get the kind of results that you're looking for.
Fantastic. And Marty, take us home.
Yeah, so my advice is pretty simple on the surface. So the most difficult thing to do in our industry, hands down, no doubt about it, is to sell the product. It is the most challenging thing. It is a very competitive marketplace. The consumer, the retailer have very high expectations, and there's always someone that's going to want to be out competing one way or another. Selling the product is the most difficult thing. The second, by the way, is bottling, okay? Because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But for wineries, a lot of the time we can get in our own way and think that what we're doing is the most difficult thing every day, which is growing grapes. Not easy, but it's not the most difficult. Making wine, not easy, but not the most difficult. Bottling, not easy, but not the most difficult. The most difficult thing is to sell. And so when you realize what your distributor is doing out there and what the retailers are entertaining the consumers, you've got to understand that that's got to be the priority every single day at a winery. Then we'll do all the other stuff. But the supporting that sale is a huge deal. A lot of wineries don't realize that because we're so busy with so many other things. But we've got to support our partners in the sale. And to do that, you should learn their systems. You should speak their language, not your language, to them. You should ask for data and information back so your decision-making process is informed on how, in this case, Southern Glazers is translating that information, and they understand the consumer far better than we ever will. They're closer to it. So we need to know what the retail is thinking and how our partners at Southern Glazers want to execute upon that and prioritize it so that it can go through that pipeline in a really clean way. If we do that, we give ourselves the best chance of winning, the best chance of making the sale. If we turn bottling as a problem into Southern Glazers' problem, we're wasting their time. They should be out talking to the retailer. We don't want them to have to deal with our upstream problems in the wine making or processing side of things. We want the Southern Glazers team and the retailers to focus on making the sale. And all too often wineries put that as, well, I'll make it. It'll be delicious. It'll look cool. I've got a great story. They'll sell it. It's not that easy, folks. There's a lot more to it. And I would say top priority is supporting the team to sell.
Brilliant. What a way to end it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For the listeners and watchers, for those interested in more insights like these, I encourage you to visit the resources page of encompass-tech.com or vintrace.com to learn more about the Maker to Market conference for the modern beverage industry that we host each year. It's a chance to learn how organizations just like Foley Family Wines and Southern Glazers are using modern technology to future-proof their operations. And with that, a massive, massive thank you to Marty, Julie, and Nathan for joining us. I hope everybody has a fantastic day, because why not? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.